So we know the please go ahead.
Foundation of Western culture. Western civilization is often referred to as being a Greco-Roman civilization. The official religion was one of idolatry. The Greeks and Romans worshipped a multitude of gods, all distinguished from man by their immorality, and they performed special type of sacrificing for each god.
So it's important for us to understand the origins of culture. You know, sometimes we find Muslims, excuse me for this word, but they are aping. Aping means you blindly follow. You blindly follow. You do something like this, and then the one in front of you, he will do the same thing, and that's it. So we find that people are not thinking about what they're doing, they're not looking deeply. I'm very shy and embarrassed when I see that a Muslim, for example, is wearing a shirt with a logo for Playboy, something pornographic and disgusting. Do you know what you are wearing? Then you put this t-shirt and you are wearing a hat at the same time, or you go in the surah to pray in the musalla. And do you know the brand that you are wearing? What does it mean? And, you know, for example. Or you find that the Muslim is putting the birthday cake and then putting the candles, lighting the candle, and then blowing the candles out. A'udhu billah. These candles are pagan rituals. This is something that people who used to worship fire and the devil, they do this. And then they say you blow out the candle, then you make your prayer, then your prayer will be accepted, blah, blah, blah. So as Muslims, sometimes we are just blindly following, not thinking about what is the origin of what we are doing. So it's interesting, Dr. Bilal Phillips, he goes deeply into, for example, the name of the days of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. All these names are based on gods. Gods that they used to worship, either in the German culture, or the Roman, or the Greek, and so on and so forth. So he showed how Thursday is for Thor, the thunder god. Sunday was for the sun god. Monday was for the moon god. And what was it? Saturday was for Saturn, one of the gods for this and that, and so on and so forth. So it shows you that in many things that we're using in our day-to-day life, we don't even realize or understand the origins. So it's good for us to be smart, to be intellectual, to be well-informed, to read, to understand the history. Do we want to follow a life based on Greco-Roman civilization? When the founders of those societies and philosophies and civilizations, people like Aristotle, for example, we find that they believed in homosexuality, it's okay. They lived as pedophiles that would abuse children. This is their lifestyle and their morality. Do we accept that those people will teach us how to live? When if they were alive today, we will have them arrested for this lifestyle? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So we need to understand more about how they lived and what they did, and do we agree with that? Do we believe that that's right? Even if they have some good ideas. The problem when you are following what they call the human experiment is that it takes a long time to get to a good result. Because this experiment is going over and over and over. We said communism. Oh, communism sounds good. Everybody shares everything. Oops. 75 years later, communism was wrong, failed. Let's try something else. Capitalism is the right way. Oh, no, but capitalism, when there's no morality, no ethics, no morals, oh, it's not good either. Okay, X on capitalism. Let's try the next one. And so on and so forth. But along the way, people are suffering, people are dying, people are being imprisoned, tortured. Why? Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants ease for us. He said, from the very beginning, don't do all these experiments and figure out the hard way what's good. I'm telling you from the beginning, this is the good way, the right way, the best way, the only way. So other societies, civilizations, cultures, they have some good elements and aspects, no doubt. But they have also mistakes. And they are finding those mistakes themselves after experience, because those mistakes will be revealed. But only it's a matter of time. But we should not be fooled. Not like the young child who you tell them hot and they said, is it really hot? I want to see. Okay. I burn myself. Okay, now I believe it is hot. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that's the wrong way, follow the right way. Definitely we take it from the beginning without going through that path. So he talks about their lifestyles. These were some of their gods. Yeah, so they believed that the human beings were gods, but they were basically immortal, meaning they didn't die. So Zeus was the head, and then he had other ones, And then those gods, they actually married sometimes and had children with human beings. So like Hercules was half god, half man, and this and that, right? So subhanAllah, what happened is that that culture creeped in and affected other religions. So we can see its effects in something like Christianity. So when the Roman Emperor in like around 325 AD, something like this, when he decided to become a Christian, it's very difficult now to get all your people to become Christian and leave all of their ways behind. So they tried to merge and incorporate some things together. As we see for many Muslims today, Muslims living in a country like India, for example. I was surprised to deal with some Muslims when they said, oh, we do this. I said, what is this? They said, originally maybe it's Hindu thing, but we are doing it now as part of our culture. Because when you are living with other people, then the culture starts to merge into the religion, or another religion has an effect on that religion, and so on and so forth. So this is what ended up happening for them. And the Prophet ﷺ warned us. He said, you will follow the footsteps of the people who came before you, step by step. Even if they go into a small lizard hole, you'll go in the same hole. So the Sahaba said, you're talking about the Jews and Christians, O Messenger of Allah? He said, who else? Who else? So the people of the book, the Quran, is full of their stories. The Jews and the Christians, the followers of Musa a.s. and Isa a.s. and so on. Why? So we can take heed, so we can learn. So we don't have to go through it the hard way, and we can realize that look at how their religion over time became corrupted. We need to preserve Islam in its unadulterated form, the way it was from Prophet Muhammad's time. So you can find that something like a big celebration for Christians is Christmas. We know that Isa a.s., even in their own Bible, it says he was not born in December in the winter. He was not born at that season or at that time. It's totally wrong. So we know that the 25th of December was a time when they would worship the sun god, and it was also the winter solstice where the day would become longer, and so they would celebrate that, and so on and so forth. So they said, okay, this is the time when Isa a.s. was born. And by the way, Isa a.s. is what? He's similar to Zeus and Hercules and the other system we had. He had a godfather and a human mother, and he's like this and like that, and this ended up creeping into Christianity, while it was not part of their original beliefs. So we need to be very cautious and very careful. So many things actually in their daily and normal life, like in America, for example, he gives some examples from America. Number 13 is an unlucky number. Is that right? So Isa a.s., in his Last Supper, they believe that his dinner that he had with his 12 apostles was where he ended up being betrayed later on by Judas, and they believe he was crucified because of that. So they said 13, 12 plus Isa was 13. So 13 is a very bad number for them. So there are many places in America or other countries where they would exclude the number 13. Like here in Malaysia, I noticed for the Chinese it's the number 4. They told me the symbol for 4 looks like the symbol for death. Something like this. So they will not put a 4th floor in a building. It will be 3 and then 3A and then 5 and so on and so forth. So these kind of superstitions, we know that Allah didn't reveal any authority for this. It doesn't have any impact in your life. You have to know and believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of all things. And Shaykh Hussein will get further into that in the section of Tawheed, inshallah.
So just to inform you that the Shaykh, these slides actually, they are the intake in your notes.
Do they have the slides?
Yeah.
They don't have the slides.
No, they don't.
Okay. So you have an expanded version of the slides.
Whatever Shaykh is explaining, it is in your notes already. So right now, we are on page number 6, inshallah. And these are the facts actually. The effects of the Western culture is the names of the day that the Shaykh said. Another effect of the number. And the Copernicus theory by Galileo, the research for the final cause which left little room for God. And deism, then that gives to deism, and deism brings the atheism. I hope that Shaykh will explain that inshallah.
Yeah. Stay on this slide. I will talk about that now. So the notes you have are actually a summarized version of the original book. You can find it in PDF online, or even in the Islamic Online University. They broke it down into modules for you. So, Copernicus' theory, what was Copernicus' theory? Who studied science, who studied about astronomy? Anybody? Nobody. Who's Galileo? Do we know about Galileo?
Yes.
Okay, what was Galileo?
One said that the head was turned around the head.
Yeah, so Copernicus was one of those people who came and said, wait a minute, the sun is actually the center of our solar system. Earth is going around, and Earth is also spinning on its axis. Of course, most people at that time didn't believe that. We know that many people before thought the Earth was flat. They said if you go to the edge of the Earth, you will fall off. The Earth is not round. There's no way that there's anything beyond this ocean, that there's another land or country there, and so on and so forth. So the church in that time became so powerful. And what happened was that church was used as a way for certain individuals to become very rich and to control the masses. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran to us, He said, إِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْأَحْبَارِ وَالرُّهْبَانِ لَيَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ النَّاسِ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Indeed, a lot of the monks and a lot of these priests and rabbis, they are taking the people's money unjustly. So they created a huge tax system, and they took so much money from the people, and they forbid the people from even having a copy of the Bible or learning how to read. So people stayed ignorant for many, many generations. So when science was starting to come out, you know, the European people were living in the Dark Ages, they called it. So it was really a dark age where the people were living backwards. For example, bathing was something that you would do twice in your life. Once when you were born, once when you die. It was normal for the pigs to live in the house, and their manure, the feces that comes from them, to be there in the house. So you'll see even in paintings, for example, of the older times, that women will carry a handkerchief by their nose like this. Why? They will soak it in perfume, and they will hold it here just to cover the horrible smell from the people and the animals. This is how they were living. And of course, we know long before that, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is teaching us to bathe, to brush our teeth, to make wudu, to live as clean people, and to live in a very civilized way. But we can find that those people who are now considered superior in the world, some time ago, subhanAllah, they were living in a very backwards way. So we should understand some of the history, where we came from, where they came from, and so on. Copernicus' theory was a theory that said the universe is different than what we thought. Now the church was in control, so the church is the one that says what's right and what's wrong. So the church said, you're wrong. And at that time, when they go against somebody, they don't just say that person is wrong. They will imprison the person, they may kill the person, they will hang them, or they will burn them, they will claim that they're a witch, or they will do all kinds of different things. You can read about that and see from the history about the Inquisition that occurred in Spain, and so on and so forth. So Galileo was a champion of that. So later on, it had been proven Galileo's right. Galileo was using his research to prove Copernicus' theory. So the church was becoming exposed that not everything the church says is right. Especially the Catholic Church. They said the Pope is God's representative on earth. Anything he says is right. Anything that he decrees becomes law. So the Roman Empire, we know the church became a very powerful institution in that empire and was ruling a huge portion of the world. So when human beings now began to have more education, they started to learn about science, they started to see that the world is different than we understood it before. There are causes and effects. There's a rational explanation for things that are going on in the world. We don't just have to say that it's all magically occurring. So that led people to say, hey, the church is wrong, and the church has been controlling us, taking our money, keeping us uneducated, and has created this class system. We don't like the church, therefore we don't like religion anymore. So that's why you find in Europe until now, there's a very anti-religion attitude. Many people are atheists, many people are away from religion. If they attribute themselves to any religion, they're secular in the sense that religion has nothing to do with the rest of our life. So this adverse effect has occurred because of their history. But for us as Muslims, alhamdulillah, some of the greatest Muslim scholars were also great scientists. Islam doesn't contradict with science. What we do though is we hold science according to the Quran and Sunnah. We don't hold the Quran and Sunnah according to science. What does that mean? For example, Some time ago, there was a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that says, if a fly falls in your soup or your drink, then you can dip it inside, all the way under the liquid. And then you can pull it out and throw it, and you can drink the soup or drink. Or if you choose not, you don't drink it. The Prophet ﷺ says this. Some people in modern times, after scientific development and so on, they said flies have bacteria, they're dirty. This is incorrect, so it's not an authentic hadith. Even though it was proven Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said it. They said it cannot be correct, doesn't fit with science. Now in more modern times, they discovered that the fly has bacteria on its wing and it has antibodies on the other wing. So if it falls on the surface of your drink, if the bacteria gets in your drink or soup, you could be harmed by drinking it. But if you dip it in, the antibodies are released and it will neutralize the effect of the bacteria. You will not be harmed by drinking it after you dip it in fully. So the Prophet ﷺ, was he a scientist? Did he have a microscope? Does he know? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him from the unseen and he informed his followers. Now people said, oh, okay, it's authentic hadith. No. See, we don't hold the religion to criteria of science. Science is changing every day. 50 years ago, what our ancestors said, we laugh about it today. We said, silly people, they used to think like this and like this. Come on. Don't they know? Don't they know about neutrons and electrons and quark and this and that? And now they're going to string theory, and you can understand science is developing so fast. And what people believe is changing all the time. So they know that something that is there as a theory is not necessarily 100% a law or a fact, but it can change over time. So we hold science to the criteria of the Quran and Sunnah. We don't hold the Quran and Sunnah to the criteria of science, which is man-made and changing on a regular basis. Does that make sense? Okay. We have a question and answer session later, is that right? Okay. So over time now, with all of this kind of scientific research and development, Darwin came out and you had all of these people coming and trying to explain things. So all of a sudden the European mind is saying, oh, there's no need for God anymore. We used to say God explains the unexplainable, but now everything is explainable, no need for God. We said this is very silly. If I said, here's a laptop, I'm not quite sure how the laptop works. So I said there's a manufacturer who made the laptop. But now I research, I take the laptop apart, I understand how the laptop works. Now because I understand how the laptop works, I said, means nobody made the laptop. Because I understand how it works. What? Doesn't make sense. Because I understand how it works, now I can appreciate the manufacturer more. I can say manufacturer is a smart person because the laptop is very amazing and has great capabilities and it's good quality and so on and so forth. So the more we understand the amazing universe, doesn't mean that nobody created all of that universe. Doesn't make sense. It just means that we are learning more and understanding more about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this amazing system. And that a system so intricate and precise didn't just happen by accident. If you just look at those, as we mentioned, creatures created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will see how amazing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them and the improbability of that happening by random chance and by accident. But unfortunately for the European mind, they already had disdain for the church, for religion, so they started to go to theism. Okay, there's God, but I'm not so much into religion. I understand there's God, He created me, but I don't have to do much. I just live in the way that I want. Whatever I feel is good, is good. Then that went to deism. So theism was people were still quite religious. Deism was there's God and that's enough. And then atheism. So atheism until only a few hundred years ago didn't exist as this real recognized system. No, people believed in something. Did they associate partners with God? Yes. But did they believe that there was God? They did. They did. But unfortunately today now it has become, because of science, because of technology, oh, we are so powerful and so amazing, so there must be no creator and no God. SubhanAllah. But the human being forgets. A tsunami comes and in a few seconds 250,000 people are killed. Wow. Human being is so weak But yet we feel that we are in control, we understand everything, we know so much. We know that 50 years from now, our descendants will look at us and they will laugh. They will say, silly people. They used to use iPad, they didn't understand about technology where you just do it in the air like this and then you have, whatever, who knows what new technology will come. So subhanAllah, we have to remember that we are not at the peak. Yes, we are developing in terms of knowledge and science and technology, great. But that should only have a greater appreciation for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Not that we say there's no God and there's no right way to live. Because we can see by the way people are living today, there's something wrong.
Secular democracy, inshallah. It says that Darwin regarded white Europeans as more advanced than other human races, which give rise to secular democracy, faiths and worship. It is also the view that public education and other matters of civil policy should be conducted without the introduction of religious elements. And it is the definition from the Living Webster Encyclopedia Dictionary of English.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. We start by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as all praise is due to Him. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings upon His last and final messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Darwin, as Dr. Bilal Phillips mentioned, he went on his famous trip on the Beagle in the 1800s, and he left as a Christian, devout, believing, and so on. But as he was reading from the writings of different philosophers, and as he began to dig deeper in his scientific investigation, he came to the conclusion, no. There is no creator, and all of this is coming from evolution. And he came up with the concept of natural selection, or what we refer to today as survival of the fittest. So that the changes that happen biologically, and people have also applied his theories in society as well, so saying in systems such as capitalism and so on, that the fittest are the ones that will be wealthy, that will be ruling and dominating and so on. Of course, unfortunately, the prevailing trend at his time was one of racism. So he believed that whites and European were superior. And unfortunately, he said that, for example, in the evolutionary process, the whites were farther up the ladder than those who were dark-skinned, and the majority of people accept that. Of course, we look at that in modern times, and most people would say this is racist and outrageous. But unfortunately, there are still people that think that way today. I just saw a clip a little while ago from Fox News in the United States, for example, in Egypt, when the protests began and all this kind of uprising began in Egypt. So they were debating the future of Egypt and how will that affect Israel and how will that affect America and so on. So the conclusion that the analyst said is that we in the West, and North America in particular, are genetically superior. And because of that, we are able to handle democracy and all of this freedom and what it comes with. But people in the Middle East are not ready for that and are not able to effectively make the right decisions, blah, blah, blah. So if you can imagine that there are still people that talk like that today, and that say, for example, our system of secular democracy, well, yes, it should apply to everyone, but you're not necessarily capable yourself to govern it. So we will govern it from far away, and we will force it down your neck, and so on. This is the mentality that does exist among some people, unfortunately. What's the concept of secularism? In America, they refer to it as the concept of separation of church and state. So we talked about the negative experiences that people related to the church had. They looked at the church as backwards, they looked at the church as manipulating, taking advantage, controlling, not allowing people to get education, not allowing people to prosper financially, and basically enslaving the majority or the masses. So this negative connotation of the church, this negative connotation of religion, made the people very hypersensitive. So they said there will no longer be any mixing between religion and politics. So we know that, for example, Christianity, there are two main streams of Christianity, or three if you will. Anybody know what the three main denominations or branches of Christianity are? Catholic is one. Protestant, well, everybody's shouting the answer, so I guess I can't give this. Protestant, Catholic, and what's the third one? Well, Baptist is a type of Protestant. Orthodox. Orthodox. So Orthodox is in Eastern Europe, places like Greece and so on, or even the Coptics in Egypt. They're part of the Orthodox Church and so on. So these are the three main ones. So the Catholic Church was the main one in the beginning, but the Catholic Church had so many bid'ahs, innovations, if you will. So what happened was they were worshiping saints, they were worshiping Mary, they were worshiping statues, they were living a very opulent life. So the Pope and all of the bishops and so on became very rich, became very wealthy. They were wearing gold and silk and this and that. So majority of Christians were looking at that and saying, something's wrong here. This is not really the right way that Christianity should be. So what occurred was that people like Martin Luther and Calvin in Europe, they broke away from the Catholic Church. And they came up with a number of points where they disagreed, and they became known as the Protestants. So the Protestants were people that were fundamentally against certain beliefs and practices within the church, and they are the ones who later on migrated, for example, to America. So Americans are in general Protestant, right? Every president in America has been Protestant, except for John F. Kennedy. He was the only Catholic. So Protestants, they came with this belief that there's fundamentally something wrong with the way the Catholic Church. There's fundamentally something wrong with the way the Catholic Church is doing things. The Pope is not God's representative on earth. He's not infallible, because Catholics said the Pope is infallible. He doesn't make mistakes, and he can speak on behalf of God and so on. So the Protestants didn't believe all of this. So they said that now we have a new system where there isn't this staunch hierarchy, where there isn't this supreme leader, and this supreme leader is not going to be the head of any government, because there was a time where church and government in the Roman Empire were one and the same. The Pope was the one who was calling all the shots and so on. So when they created this sort of decentralized system amongst the Protestants, then many denominations popped up. So when you talk about Baptists, when you talk about Presbyterians, Lutherans, so on and so forth, all of these are denominations under the Protestants. Under the Protestants. So that was one break. The second break was then people who were Protestants, when people like Darwin came along, they said, okay, now there's no longer any need for God. So if anything, we will just go for deism. There's a God, but we don't need to actively be religious. Or we go for atheism. Between. There's God, maybe not. Sometimes I'm in doubt. If there is, I don't really have to follow any particular way. What does that lead to? It leads to chaos. We talked about 7 billion people on earth. Nobody can agree on the same thing. Even two identical twins won't agree on everything. So how can we then have 7 billion different ways to follow? But human beings decided in the West, secularism is the way to go. A system of beliefs which rejects all forms of religious faith and worship. It is also the view that public education and other matters of civil policy should be conducted without the introduction of a religious element. So what has that led to is that the moral fiber of society is falling apart. So in America, no longer do you have certain family values or morals being instilled in children. Why? Because the majority of their tarbiyah, the majority of their education, the majority of their development process is coming from where? In the West. From school. It's not really coming from family anymore. Mother and father both work. Mother and father are quite independent, in the sense that as soon as child reaches 18, he's on his own, get out of the house. You're on your own. No longer are we going to have a say in your life or try to influence you. And child also from a young age is looking to have no interaction with parents or no interference from parents. So school doesn't teach you anything about good and bad and right and wrong. It only teaches you math and science, and that's it. So the child then graduates from the school. Parents didn't raise the child. School didn't help to raise this child. Society doesn't have set norms. Everything is becoming okay. What yesterday was good is today bad. What yesterday was bad is today good. So Dr. Bilal Phillips gives a good example of that. We'll come across it, I think, in the next slides. Next, please. So a secular democracy, okay, please, you can.
In secular democracy, humans are product of the evolutionary process, having no more purpose than the other animals around them. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die. According to this view, religion only hinders humans' freedom to enjoy this life.
So when you start to take a secular view of the world, and